I want to begin today with a question that I think is one of the most honest questions ever addressed to God. It is from King David's Psalms, number 22, and it begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? 4 words in Hebrew, Eli, Eli, lama azavtani. They open the 22nd Psalm, and they have echoed through the centuries with a power that neither time nor commentary has diminished. They are the words of someone who has not lost faith, who still says, my God, but who is experiencing something that feels indistinguishable from abandonment. The presence that was always there was no longer there. The God who answered is not answering. The one who was close is now unreachably far. Today we read Psalm 22 with Carl Jung, who described the experience of divine absence as one of the most psychologically and spiritually significant states a human being can enter, and who believed that what feels like abandonment is sometimes something else entirely. Let me read the opening of the psalm in full, because it deserves to be heard rather than summarized. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer, by night, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. The psalm continues for 31 verses. The first half is unrelieved anguish. The speaker surrounded by enemies, exhausted, poured out like water, his heart melted within him. And then around verse 22, something shifts. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly, I will praise you. The second half of the psalm is praise, vindication, the confident announcement of divine faithfulness. But it is the first half that has made this psalm immortal. It is the first half that was quoted from the cross according to the gospel accounts. It is the first half that speaks to everyone who has ever stood at the edge of an experience of God and found that God was not there. Jung returned to the theme of divine absence at various points in his long career, and his thinking about it is one of the most unusual and psychologically rich contributions in the history of spirituality. And then comes the experience the psalmist is describing. The presence withdraws. The prayer is not answered. The long night produces nothing. The cry goes up day after day and is not met. Jung called this, in its most extreme form, the experience of the deus absconditus, the hidden God. And he believed that this experience, terrible as it is actually the approach of something deeper and more complete than the presence that preceded it. Because the God who withdraws is a God who is no longer simply a projection of the human need for comfort and protection. The God who hides is a God who begins to have reality independent of our wish for him. Let me say that more carefully because it is subtle and it matters. In his book, Answer to Job, which we explored in a previous episode, Jung argues that the God of the early biblical narrative is not yet fully conscious. He acts from impulse. He is vast and overwhelming and real, but he is not yet the God who has fully met the human moral consciousness that confronts him in Job and later in the psalmist's despair. The experience of abandonment, of the God who does not answer, is, in Jung's reading, not simply the failure of the divine to show up. It is the beginning of a new kind of relationship with the divine, a relationship in which the human being must stand in the dark without the comfort of the immediate presence, must hold their ground without the reassurance they previously relied on, must say, as the psalmist says, my God, maintaining the relationship, maintaining the claim on the divine, even when nothing comes back. The holding on in the dark is, for Jung, a form of the individuation process at its most demanding. It is the equivalent of Jacob at the Jabbok, refusing to release the wrestling partner, even through the long night, even through the wounds. It is the refusal to resolve the tension prematurely, the willingness to stay in the question rather than accepting an easy answer. There is a phrase near the middle of the psalm that has always stayed with me. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near and there is no one to help. Trouble is near, there is no one to help, and therefore do not be far. The logic here is not the logic of comfort seeking. It is the logic of one who has already accepted that help may not come immediately, that the trouble is real and pressing, that the ordinary sources of rescue are unavailable. And from within that acceptance, from within the full recognition of the difficulty, comes the address to God. Not a demand for rescue, a statement of need and a refusal to stop speaking. Jung would find in this the psychological posture of the person who has genuinely entered the dark night and has not fled from it, has not replaced it with false comfort, has not resolved the tension by abandoning the relationship, has not settled for a God who is only present when presence is easy. The psalmist is doing something very difficult, maintaining the relationship with God at the moment of God's greatest apparent absence, saying, "My God," to a God who seems not to answer. This maintenance of the relationship through its darkest moment is, in Jungian terms, the integration of the dark side of the divine, the acknowledgement that God is not only the comforting presence, but also the absence, the silence, the withdrawal. And then the turn. For he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. He has not hidden his face. The cry was heard. The presence that seemed absent was present, but in a different mode, at a different register, not immediately available to the consciousness that was calling. Jung spoke of this in many different contexts as the experience of the self's presence through the very experience of its apparent absence. The dark night of the soul is not the absence of God. It is the absence of the God the ego knows how to access. And in the darkness, something is happening that the ego cannot register. A movement at a level beneath consciousness, a preparation, a slow return. The second half of Psalm 22 breaks into praise, not because the circumstances have changed. The text gives no external reason for the turn, but because something in the speaker has changed. The long cry in the dark has done something. The staying with the question has produced a readiness that was not there before. The answer, when it comes, is not a rescue. It is a recognition. He has listened to my cry for help. He was listening all along. I think this psalm speaks to something that many people experience in the middle of their lives, not only in relation to God, but in relation to meaning itself. The frameworks that held in the first half of life begin to lose their traction. The certainties that felt solid begin to feel provisional. And the things that previously gave a sense of presence, community, tradition, clear purpose, seem distant or unavailable or simply not working. This is the experience the psalmist is describing. And the psalmist's response is not to abandon the relationship, it is to deepen it, to cry more honestly, to stay longer in the dark, to maintain the address to the one who seems absent. My God, not there is no God, but you are mine, and you are not answering, and I will not stop calling. This is, I think, one of the bravest things in the entire Bible.